33-story hotel and condo project.
I'd probably be
okay,
like
that. Stop. Tap.
This is a plan by the community for the community.
This one here. Show me.
No problem, Ken. Thanks for having me.
It's Kent Mulgat for KelownaNow. This is Kent Mulgat with KelownaNow, joined by Superintendent Brent Mundle, the officer in charge of the Kelowna RCMP detachment.
Yeah, good morning, Kent.
Good morning. Thanks so much for coming in. I know you're busy and we really appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, so I'm happy to be here today.
So this is a huge responsibility you've taken on since last year.
That's correct.
And I'd like to know, going in, when you assume this job, do you come at it with specific goals in mind, things you think really need to happen in terms of policing in Kelowna from the outset?
Yeah, when I was first successful in the job, there's a number of things that I had on my mind that I felt we could improve upon. And I'm happy to say over the course of the last 12 to 16 months, we've been able to implement some of those things. Primarily one of the issues that we started at almost approximately this time last year was our police and crisis team, where we placed an RCMP officer with a mental health worker to attend calls that are mental health related. We've seen very good success in that over the last year, and that's a program that we're hoping to increase in the not too distant future by adding another officer to that group, and perhaps with some assistance, another mental health professional as well. Another area that I'm deeply passionate about is employee well-being. So there's a number of things within our office that we started to involve ourselves in. Recently we partnered with UBC with regards to the BARC program and introducing therapy dogs into our work environment. So those are just a couple of the areas that I've sort of looked at, but where we've made certain inroads, that's for sure.
So you're talking, are these things to like boost morale within the detachment?
Yeah, exactly. I see it as very centric to Kelowna detachment. I'm not aware of this being done anywhere else within the country, and we were fortunate to create a partnership with UBC and Dr. Binfit there. And it's police work has a lot of stressors associated to it, not only for the RCMP officers at our building, but the other categories of employees like the municipal employees and such. And this was just a way to introduce a pilot project to see if the dogs had any impact on how people felt through the course of their workday.
Right. It seems like a bit of a departure. I think of the RCMP as being kind of a quasi-military operation where it's yes sir to your superiors, but this sounds like you're taking a more sensitive approach.
Yeah, it's certainly out of the norm, but I think in general, and I think this has been widely reported on, mental health issues arising from some of the work that we are faced with constantly certainly have a toll on our membership, and anything we can do to reduce that and keep employees healthy and at work is a good thing.
We have seen an ongoing problem with homelessness and drug use and all sorts of problems associated with it. But most of us can just kind of walk right on by and be bothered by it and carry on to our vehicle or whatever. But your members have to engage and deal with this. It must be hard on them, all of the difficult scenarios that they have to try to work through.
Yeah, in particular with homelessness in the community, it's a sensitive topic, but as well it's very complex, and there's a number of things involved with homelessness that aren't police or related to criminality. And so we work with a number of different partner agencies in the community. Where necessary, we use an enforcement approach, but our officers also do a lot of outreach and attempt, when they are dealing with people, to connect them with services in the community so that they can get out of the pattern that they're in.
So do you feel that this Journey Home Task Force is sort of heading in the right direction with trying to find ways to deal with that problem?
Yeah, I had the luxury, I guess, to get selected and be part of the task force. So I attend the meetings regularly, and I'm really hopeful that out of that whole process, a plan for the community comes forward. And some of the things I've seen to date are impressive to me and leave me with hope that as a community we'll find a way to kind of deal with this situation and make some overall improvements.
Right. I know that in the short term we have this Cornerstone facility.
Yes.
80 people in there sleeping on mats. Not an ideal situation, and I know there's some concern with businesses nearby. The suggestion has been made that perhaps there should be more of a responsibility on the operators of that, and maybe to some extent the RCMP, to keep the immediate area clear of people sleeping in doorways, etc. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, there's, excuse me, the the new Cornerstone Shelter, that arose because there was a specific need in the community, and that was as a result of, the large numbers of homeless people that we had throughout the winter, and they needed a safe and warm location to go. We've worked with Cornerstone as well as other shelters in the community to assist them with their operations as well as enforcement and such within the areas around those buildings. And we're continuing to work with those shelters as well as other community groups to address those issues. But again, sometimes it's a perception issue. Just because you're homeless doesn't necessarily mean you're involved in the criminal element, right? And in those situations, we try and assist those people as best we can with referring them to resources that may help them.
Right. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of overt efforts by the RCMP to be inclusive to women, to people of different races, to different sexual orientations. And I think a lot of people see that as a positive. I'm just wondering, from the inside, do you see a spirit of inclusiveness that starts to sink in the culture behind the doors of the detachment?
Yeah, I've got 25 years service coming up here in the RCMP, and in that time I've noticed a huge change, and a change for the positive. And I know if I look at the demographics of the employees that we have at our detachment, I'm very happy and welcome to see all the diverse groups that are represented. So I think there are significant changes being made, and internally I see them as being accepted.
Right. We from time to time get stats, statistics on crime, and it doesn't feel like Kelowna is a crime-infested place, but it seems like we always end up ranking really high on those lists, like there's something wrong.
Right.
But how do you view those numbers? Is it skewed by the fact that we have more tourists that come here? What sort of things bump our numbers up?
Yeah, there's, overall each year they, the stats that come out in the summer, the crime severity index and such, tend to place us up in the top 5. I think we were number 5 this past year. But yeah, they are skewed by certain things. I believe the number we have of tourists that come through the year are 1.6 or 1.7 million. So that certainly creates a bit of a blip that sort of skews our numbers because they're based on our population.
Right, so we have more people than our population.
Yeah, and so when they make those comparisons, they're basing them on our static population rather than what we typically see as a result of the tourist season. But also the other thing that can skew stats as well is our enforcement efforts. So, I know in the last couple of years since I've been in the community, we've been rated high with respect to impaired driving, and we've been rated high with respect to drug offenses. Well, those are crimes that are really based on proactive efforts by the police. So if we're out there actively, in the case of impaired drivers, doing check stops and stopping vehicles and those types of things regularly, then we're going to increase those stats because we're increasing the percentage that we're going to come across those types of people. And it's the same thing with the drug-related stats. People are concerned about some of the drug activity downtown and in certain areas around the city at the street level. So we put a lot of effort into doing projects and things to target those, which of course drives our stats up. Whereas another community that might not put that same effort into it or have the resources to do it will not see the same increase.
Right. So at least on one stat sheet, the more you do to deal with problems, the more it looks like you got a problem.
Right.
Right. What perception do you get in terms of how the public sees the RCMP? Do you feel that there's a good relationship between your members and the public they serve right now?
Yeah, I certainly believe that. On a regular basis, weekly and monthly, I receive very positive comments from members of the community who've had interactions with our officers, and they've chosen to send us cards or children making posters or sending me an email. So I think in general we have a good relationship with most members of the community. There'll always be those one-offs where something doesn't go right, and when those occasions occur, we attempt to take the opportunity to correct that as best we can.
Yeah.
But it's not always possible, but we do our best.
Right. Well, it's always nice to have these sort of conversations.
Yes.
It helps, keeps us in contact. Thanks for Brent.
No, thank you very much.
Superintendent Brent Mundle of the Kelowna RCMP. You're watching Kelowna Now.